Agency will now come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, I just got a text
Hold on one
from
second.
Mike.
Oh, I got a text from him already.
You got it? Okay.
Just
wanna
the
make sure you
secretary,
got it.
has this meeting been advertised according to law?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it has.
Coming from New Brunswick.
Yeah, he left, that was it. Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Here.
Mr. Travisano?
Here.
Mr. Philander?
Here.
Mr. Pavoni?
Here.
Mr. Delina?
Here.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Here.
Councilman Lembo?
Here. First order of business is approval of minutes from prior meetings held on October 26, 2017.
I make a
November-
motion we
hold on,
approve.
Hold on. November 9th, 2017, and we're not going to do December 14th, 2017 at this time.
Yes,
Can I have a
Mr.
motion, please?
I make a motion we approve on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Yes.
Mr. Travisano?
Yes.
Mr. Philander?
Yes.
Mr. Pavoni?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Delina?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Lembo?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, before you get to 6A, I just want to indicate we did an amended agenda. One item we mistakenly listed at first that Joan had, our regular recording secretary, was listed as the payee. We corrected that for Nicole Boranowitz, our substitute for that date. That's the only change on amended agenda.
It's item E.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next order of business is authorization for payment of bills non-NL. That's A through N. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion we approve on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Yes.
Mr. Travisano?
Yes.
Mr. Philander?
Yes.
Mr. Delina?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Lembo?
Yes.
Next order of business, 6B, authorization for payment of bills NL-related non-escrow to be paid when funds are available. That's O, P, and Q. Can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion we approve on roll call vote. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Yes.
Mr. Travisano?
Yes.
Mr. Philander?
Yes.
Mr. Pavoni?
Yes.
Mr. Delina?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Lembo?
Yes.
Next order of business, 6C, authorization for payment of bills to be paid from escrow accounts to be paid only if escrow funds are available, and that's R through Z. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion we approve on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Yes.
Mr. Travisano?
Yes.
Mr. Philander?
Yes.
Mr. Pavoni?
Yes.
Mr. Delina?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Lembo?
Yes.
Okay, pending matters. Are we gonna, is the presentation gonna be under pending matters?
First, I'm going to go through and provide my report, then we'll bring them up.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm happy to report the project is moving forward at a good pace. Okay, since the last meeting, a lot of things have happened. We've met with North American Properties to review the projects, discuss their plans, reviewed other plans. We've met with a lot of their project team, and they really have made some great progress. And I've asked Kevin Polston from the team here to go through and be here with his team to go through and present some of the things that they've presented to us. And in a little while, I'll ask them to go through and provide you with an update directly from them. But we've made a tremendous amount of progress in the last month, and I'm really psyched up that the project's moving again. In addition to that, from what I understand, there's been a lot of progress with Bass Pro talking directly with our building department in order to prepare for building permits. Timing on that is still not finalized, but there's a lot of action going on, and there's real action, so I'm happy to report that. We have to go through and do a few things, I think, from the standpoint of deciding on a few things that are not on the plan. Some of those may have to be discussed with the mayor and council as it relates to exactly where and how the amenities get put on, but we're not at that point yet. That is going to happen in probably the next month or so, so we're gonna have to start thinking about that. And also in accordance with our discussions about visiting North American Properties Avalon project in Alpharetta, Georgia, I have done so. I attended meetings last week. I flew out on Friday, spent all of Friday reviewing their projects, meeting with their teams. I saw projects in Atlanta as well as the projects in Avalon that they've completed. I met with Mark Toro, the managing partner, John Kelly from development, Justin Long from development, who have been here, Matt Simon from their operations, David Weinart, who's in charge of their leasing, Kelly Kingsfield, who's in charge of experiences, Lamar Wakefield, and at least a dozen other people to go through and see exactly how they do things. They have a great team. After meeting with the people from North American Properties, I also met with a councilman by the name of Chris Owens from Alpharetta, and also a state senator who used to be on the governing body when Avalon was first being conceived. I also met with Janet Rogers, president and CEO of the awesome Alpharetta Convention and Visitors Bureau, who is funded probably partway from the town, partway from the businesses in Avalon. And they are used to improve cultural events at the party. I'm pleased to report that North American Properties are the real deal. The project is beautiful, creative, lively, well-organized, well-run, fun, and a secure project. The senator and the councilman both indicated that if Mark tells you he's going to do something for the town, he does it, and he's very helpful to nearby charities. I'd like Kevin Paulston to go through and give you an update on where we're going with our plans, because the plans, we've made great progress.
And Dave, just as a little intro to Kevin, for those who don't know, he's gonna be the man on site. He and his wife are moving up into the area, and they're gonna be the contact person in the area. But obviously, we know the rest of his colleagues are up here often anyway to discuss things. But they've made arrangements for a permanent person on site, so we'll be getting to know Kevin real well, I think, in the near future.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of knowing the folks here at North American for some of them for 25 years. In fact, John and I worked together for about 4 years in the 2000s at another development company. And when they called me in September and they said we have an opportunity we'd like for you to take a look at it in New Jersey, and I flew up here and met with them 3 or 4 days later. I came over the bridge and saw this, this piece of real estate and started to explore the opportunity. I was real excited about marrying up with North American and being the boots on the ground. So my wife and I are in the process of getting an apartment in New Brunswick early March, and that'll be a transition.
Why not say it?
We're looking for a corporate apartment, short-term furnished, and that's the closest one I
Until they
can
can
find.
finalize.
Bear with me just a minute. I had taken this off for.
You know you had to get a question like that.
Oh, I knew I would have to get a Homer question for sure. All right, I believe John Kelly's going to get us started here.
I have to tell you, this guy worked me to the bone. Had meetings scheduled every hour for me.
We appreciate that.
I'm John Kelly. I'm a partner with North American Properties, and we have several people here. You've met Kevin already. Justin Long, our VP of Development's here. Dan Bush with Mazer, who's got a long history on this project. And Paul St. Ange and Jen Smith with Gibbons. Jen's actually here on another deal, but the good news is I'm not paying her bill tonight. And, we've got John Mooney, and that's our team. First, I'd like to say thanks very much for giving Dave the opportunity to come see us, because we always say it's just hard to describe what Avalon is. It's not a shopping center. It's not an apartment complex. It's not a neighborhood. It's an experience, and I think you saw that, Dave, that it's not about the buildings and the landscaping. It's what's happening in between, and it really is the community center for the city of Alpharetta. So tonight, what we'd like to do is first just give you a very high-level update of some of the progress we've made since we came to see you when Mark spoke to you in September. And then we'd like to present to you the initial draft of our concept plan, where we'll come back with a final draft at a future meeting. But we did want to bring you up to speed on where we are and how the plan is progressing, because it is very different from the plan that the O'Neill Company was pursuing. So just a few quick things of what we've done since we were here at the end of September. We had our design charrette at the offices of Cooper Robertson. John Kirk with Cooper Robertson is here tonight, and he's going to take you through the plan in detail. The design charrette at the end of that week, there was no plan. The design charrette was really more about understanding the site and how the remediation and riverfront and environmental issues and setbacks, all those things informed the plan. And then we had retail leasing and office and hotel and all the various people that will have input into what it is we're developing, talking about what's the program, how many square feet, how many buildings, to come up with direction for these guys to go start drawing. So since that time, they've been drawing in concert with the rest of our design team, and it's been a very iterative process where they'll draw, we'll mark it up, and they go back to the drawing board. So we've made a lot of progress since that date, to the point that we are ready to present that to you today. New York ICSC. ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers. It is the big retail trade industry, and there's two big conferences. The biggest is in Las Vegas in May, and we're preparing for that already. But the second biggest of the year is in New York at the beginning of December. So that was when we announced the project to the retailer community. And our company, we come out of retail. So even though there's every product type on this plan, without the retail, the office is not going to be successful. The housing is not going to be successful, given the infrastructure and all the costs of the project. The retail drives value of every component. And I think, Dave, you probably saw what I meant by that when you were on the ground in Atlanta. On the ERG, we have met with EDA. The ERG is a critical component. It's a $233 million incentive that was approved several years ago, but it was approved based on the O'Neill plan, which was very different, and the time limits in it are set to expire. So we do need to restructure the ERG. Mark mentioned that when we came in here in September. Given the political transition with, going on in the state, that is a slower process than what we had hoped. It's had an impact to the schedule, but we're optimistic and we're working through that. We've got a follow-up meeting with them in February. Bass Pro, we're engaged on working through the lease amendment with them. They want to be at this site. They are committed to this site. The deal changes a little bit just because it's not a Bass Pro next to a mall. It's a Bass Pro next to a mixed-use environment. The O'Neill deal was O'Neill was going to build the building for them. We're doing a different transaction where we're still funding the building, but Bass Pro is going to hire and manage the contractor, which is their building. It just makes a lot more sense to do it that way. So we are working through that amendment, but they're committed to being at the site. When we were here in September, we talked about an April 19th start date. Where we are today, we are not going to be able to start on April 19th, but we're confident that later in the year we'll definitely get this thing underway. So we're looking at just a few more months, and really the ERG is the primary driver if we got to get that done before we can get the rest of it going. So next up is the team. When we were here in April, Kevin wasn't with us. We hired him, and he started in November. Actually, his first day was the first day of the design charrette, sitting in Cooper Robertson's office. But we've got some holdovers, such as Mazer, that was involved, has been involved in the project all along. Cooper Robertson's New York based, but then some of the other firms you see on here were the firms that did Avalon, and they know what it takes to execute a deal like that. So John, if you take it over from here and kind of tell them what we've been up to.
Certainly, I'm gonna work from this end of the room, if that's okay. A little bit on who we are, Cooper Robertson. Some of you have heard this before, so I apologize, but we were founded in 1979, so we've been in business close to 4 decades right now. We do a wide range of work, we like to say, from cities to gardens. Our very first project was the master plan for Battery Park City in New York. And then we were the architects of the open space, the esplanade along the waterfront, the public realm that we call it. More recently, we completed the Whitney Museum of American Art at the end of the High Line. We were the architects of record for that. We've done waterfront master plans all over the United States, from the Boston Seaport, Stamford, Connecticut, New York, obviously, Baltimore, Maryland, Charleston, South Carolina, Miami, Memphis on the Mississippi River, and in San Francisco, San Diego, and Los Angeles. So we're very familiar with the waterfronts. We do a lot of master planning, we also do a lot of architecture. So we've got a deep bench of great experience for projects like this, and we're deeply interested in it. I'm a Jersey guy. I was born and raised in Linden, New Jersey, went away to Georgia Tech, worked in Atlanta for 4 or 5 years. I know a lot of the same people that the North American Properties folks know. Then went to the University of Virginia's graduate school and made my way back to the New York metropolitan area. I've been living in South Orange for the last 24 years. So I know this site really, really well. I've gone over that bridge about 8,000 times in my lifetime. My sister's got a house on the Jersey Shore that my family and I avail ourselves of in the summer times, and spent a lot of time over there. So I've always kind of looked at that site and had some aspiration somebody would do something with it. So North American Properties is an extraordinary company in a lot of ways, and one of our mantras after 40 years in practice is our best projects are the result of our best clients. Clients drive the ultimate quality of what gets built, and North American Properties is top-notch. Their process starts with things that which all of our clients would do, which is take a look at an opportunity, come up with aspirations for what it wants to be, and then look at precedents, other places that have like components or like conditions, and visit them and see what was done well, what wasn't done well, lessons learned, and takeaways. So they made an extraordinary investment in, I don't know, 20 of us or so going around seeing waterfront developments in Baltimore and Washington, D.C., and then also some of the great towns in New Jersey. Not all the great towns in New Jersey, but many of them, including some of the seaside towns. So we started out early in the morning in Washington, D.C. We saw Inner Harbor, we saw the Wharf, we saw National Harbor, we saw a number of large-scale developments on water with mixed-use components, food and beverage, retail, office, and residential. And it was very, very interesting, the things one learns. There were places where a lot of money was spent but to no real effect. There were other places that were very, very simple but at the same time elegant and worked. And we all made notes about these things, and over lunch and dinner we would have really animated discussions about what we had just seen. Then we took the train north. We stayed near Metro Park and we visited a number of New Jersey towns. We went to Spring Lake, we went to Asbury Park, we went to Westfield, we went to Summit, we went to the mall at Short Hills. We went to a variety of places and we just looked at the way New Jersey towns worked, particularly the shore towns, Point Pleasant, a lot of places that I'm very familiar with, but I was looking at them through new lenses, thinking about your piece of property here in Sayreville and what the opportunities might be. So this is an illustrative diagram, I'll call it, of where the master plan kind of sits as of today. It is ever evolving. It was evolving first thing this morning, and we're continuing to refine it, continuing to test both the carrying capacity of the site and what makes sense from a good planning point of view to create a real town-like setting, a destination, a place people will want to be and live. So Parcel C, as you know it here, the church is there. This is the footprint for Bass Pro, and then parcel B up to the north there, and then parcel A over here, which is largely wetlands. The scheme right now is driven largely by where can the marina go, and that is driven by water depths and environmental questions and other things. And basically, this basic zone is where the marina, which will be plus or minus 400 slips of boats, wants to be, and that's an activity hub. And so you want to kind of hitch your cart to that horse. And so we've created a boulevard off Chevalier Avenue that brings you right into the heart of what will be Riverton and all the way to the water and to the marina. Chevalier, by the way, is the French word. Chevalier. I'm pronouncing it in French. It means knight in French, so it's a reasonably regal name.
I just couldn't let you keep doing that.
Chevalier?
Chevrolet.
Like Chevrolet with a little twist.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, the conception is that this will be a nicely landscaped boulevard into town. We're loading anchor retail at the kind of front end as you come in. There's a roundabout where you could head south to retail, which is lining and screening the treatment plant here to the south. But you could also head north and connect up to parcel B somewhere down the road. It's got a landscape median down the first stretch of it, and then it splits, and there's a kind of island in the middle that will be landscape but also occupiable. There might be a couple of kiosks in there where you can get a cup of coffee or ice cream. So there'll be activity associated with it, and it'll be a nice place to be. It's also a traffic calming element. When the road does this, the cars will naturally slow down and make it more pedestrian friendly for young mothers and strollers and dads walking their kids and older people just walking around having a good time. And then you come upon a kind of island here at the very heart of the beating heart of what will be Riverton, that will have a kind of jewel box, retail building in it of some kind sitting on that island associated with the Village Green. And then the last stretch of shops, and probably the most dense in terms of activity, with retail at the ground floor over multifamily housing to the south and office to the north, ultimately bringing you to the riverfront and the marina, where there'll be some food and beverage, some retail, there'll be a marina shop, and maybe the most prominent part of the promenade, which is over a half a mile along that marina front right there. And when you take all of the promenade and aggregate all the way over to parcel A, you've got almost 2 miles of waterfront access and promenade. That's pretty extraordinary anywhere in the world. When you throw in parcel A, you may be up to close to 3 miles. And so this will be a wonderful setting. There's an amphitheater here right on the water, which we think is wonderful. You can see a small play, and the backdrop will be boats with the noises from the shafts clinking together, which is a lot like wind chimes from my point of view. So again, anchor retail here. This is multifamily in a kind of wrapped scheme where you'll have courtyards and then some parking decks. You see those typologies to the south and north of this. Hotel and conference center here, maybe 300 rooms, and so that'll be a draw, and that'll be activity, and that'll have restaurants in it as well. There might be a limited service hotel here, kind of right off the Garden State Parkway and 35 and 9, so you might get 2 hotel components. And then what's in blue here are shown as office, which might be mid-rise, 6 to 8 stories, maybe over retail, maybe not. And then to the north, there's a kind of residential village, which is mixed use, but a little less intense with respect to commercial uses and retail. We'll get multifamily here back on the site. This will be a little taller. And then townhouses closer to the water. So the folks who are living in floors that are up above a little bit will have water views, but also just the economics of it, you can capture greater value selling townhouses that are waterfront than you're going to be able to capture in either rental rates or sale rates for apartments. And so the larger stuff moves a little bit further south, and the lower density stuff is closer to the water. I think in the O'Neill plan, there was kind of one retention area inlet. What we've actually shown at least 3. We consider those amenities. They're dealing with retention, but they also create water frontages. And they could be, you could have jogging trails around them. There'll be ducks in them. It'll be, anybody who's got frontages along there, that'll create value as well.
And incidentally, not to interrupt, but that's what we originally anticipated the drainage was going to be. 3 outlets from the site so that they split it up. It didn't have to be one huge one. You could have multiple water features on the site.
Which is wonderful, and it's also, this is typical of the towns in and around Spring Lake and Point Pleasant, where you get these lakes that come in kind of off the ocean, and then beautiful houses around those lakes, and they're lovely, and they kind of modulate, they kind of create neighborhoods. They're natural demarcations for neighborhoods. So, and then parcel B, which is probably down the road a little bit, we're thinking might be higher density, taller buildings, maybe structured parking. There's plenty of real estate there now to do a lot of stuff and maybe have surface parking, but that, I think, once we gain some traction in here, that'll become an incredibly important piece of the project. There's some office here associated with the North Village, and then obviously Bass Pro. So that's an overview of kind of where the plan is now. We're really excited about it, and we think it makes sense. And then we kind of parsed it into what we call precincts or quadrants, and looked at kind of what would be in any given precinct. Oh, can you go back to the plan real quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to point one thing out.
Sure.
It's from the center of the roundabout to the edge of the promenade is less than a half a mile. It's about 2,300 square feet. So from the very center of the town center, it's less than a 5-minute walk out to this roundabout, and it's less than a 5-minute walk to the marina. It's less than a 5-minute walk from that center out to the edge of the kind of mixed-use village, and less than a 5-minute walk out to this Lakeland Inlet. So it's imminently walkable, and at the same time intense in activity, like any good town would be.
Let me just interrupt also. One of the things that they haven't done yet is the traffic model to go through and assure us that the road widths are going to be proper, but their model is totally different than the previous model that we looked at, because their intention is to go through and bring the heavier traffic away from the center and only have a lighter amount of traffic actually go into the center, so that if they want to shut it down and have it for pedestrian gatherings and just have an event going on where they close down their streets. So the roads around it are going to be heavier to go through and be able to pull the traffic in and out. So it's going to be a little bit of a different model, but we have to, that's one thing that we have to get plugged into yet.
That's a good point, and you could come, how do you pronounce it?
Chevalier.
Chevalier. I'll get that right before the end. Chevalier.
Take a day or two.
You could come in Chevalier, hit the roundabout, and then head back here to where there's a lot of parking for retail, or you can come into, is this Fisher Boulevard? Paul Fisher, I always forget the name of this one, but anyway, you could bypass all that. People in the know will, if they're going to one of these anchor stores, which will take pressure off of this stretch of Chevalier, and also the more kind of residential, pedestrian-oriented stretch of
And in
Riverton Boulevard.
And to the north, there'll be one wide road that basically will drive back to the loop road that goes up across parcel B.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And that can loop right around the residential units along the waterfront and back out.
Right, along here.
So how does this all add up, John? You talked a little bit about the concepts and the component parts, but when you...
So these are kind of the gross numbers right now, and these are reasonably scientific. They weren't kind of pulled out of a hat or somewhere else. About 1.5 million square feet of retail, almost 2 million square feet of office/commercial, 800,000 square feet of hotel and conference centers, 400 slip marina, plus the attendant facilities, a dry stack storage, a marina shop, 500 units of single family, which right now are largely townhouses, and 1,500 units of multifamily. That's a serious development. And it's the right mix of stuff.
And there could be more on parcel B.
There could,
Yeah.
there could. There's plenty of capacity there for growth, so I think that will ultimately be a function of market demand. So in the precincts that the way we're kind of thinking about them, and we think about those, there's a kind of global master plan, and then you get down to a more detailed level and you start looking at different precincts and refining those. Then you take the refinements of the various precincts and you bring them back together and you've got a kind of refined master plan. But it's a zooming in, if you will. But this is just to describe how we're thinking about the precincts right now. So you get a kind of southern and eastern precinct that would have in it Bass Pro. It's about 105 acres, 850,000 square feet of retail, and maybe 125 room limited service hotel, which right now is located here. And then in the kind of mixed use village, what I keep calling the beating heart of all of this, it's about 45 acres. There's 500,000 square feet of retail, 350,000 square feet of office, a 300 room full service hotel with a conference center about 65,000 square feet, and then the marina up to 400 slips. Then there's single family component in here to flanking the mixed use village. Townhouses again, nice garden townhouses. It's about 20 acres of stuff and about 200 units of. And then the mixed use village expansion is another 13 acres. It's what's in red, I'm sorry. 250 units of multifamily and about 600,000 square feet of office. Mixed use village expansion again, moving further to the north, 90 acres, 300 units of single family housing, 900 units of multifamily housing, 50,000 square feet of retail, as I said, a little less intense in the retail function there, and 400,000 square feet of office/commercial space. And then parcel B, 50 acres, 1 million square feet of office, hotel, and commercial. We all know, again, market demand. If somebody comes in and they want Class A office space there, that's probably what you want to build.
Let me just jump in because I quizzed Mark Toro, okay, the managing partner, on office. Why so much office? I mean, we want office, okay, that's great, rateable for the borough. And they have a different model than most of the other developers came in. They actually develop the atmosphere that people want to locate their offices here. In Avalon, within almost the same building, but not the same building, they're able to have Apple and Microsoft. Okay, so it's amazing. People want to be there. The people that we spoke to wanted to be in that atmosphere. So unlike other developers that say, okay, well, we'll build it if somebody comes knocking on our door and tells us to build it, they're willing to go through and create an environment that is going to draw people to it. That's what I've been educated by them, okay, and that's what their plan is.
I'll say this as well, given the region that you're in, which is extraordinary. I, again, went to Georgia Tech. I married a Georgia Peach. I've got family and tons of friends in Atlanta. They will all tell you that Avalon is all the rage in the Atlanta-Fulton County area. The people from places like Buckhead, which is affluent, has lots of stuff going on, will drive out to Avalon on a Saturday night. That's amazing.
So, and I'll go back just a moment. So the this component, the mixed-use village, this is the Avalon, what we'll call the core of the project. This is really creating the place. We can consider it a new downtown for this community, a place where people come to gather for events. It's not just going to shop, it's really about an experience. We're committed to have retailers that provide experience. But this is not a transactional project, it's an experiential project. And when we look at that, excuse me, the scale of that core, that's very similar in scale to Avalon and Alpharetta. We have 86 acres, John, is that the correct number? 86 acres in Avalon. What we found is that we've created the place, and we have a great hotel that just opened, we have some great office partners in that project, some great residential, but we're out of land. And the development that we've stimulated around that project, condominiums, townhomes, apartments, more retail, more office, all types of development are happening now because of the place that we've created, and they want to be within walking distance of that. So the opportunity here is, and we certainly realize when we roll up this plan and say, okay, the concept plan totals this 320 plus or minus acres of developable land, 4.2 million square feet of commercial space, the marina, 2,000 residential units. Some of those components we may think are fairly, achievable in the short run, but this is a long-term plan, and this is going to take many years to build out. But we firmly believe if we create the core and the place where people want to come live, work, play, all the things that they want to have a walkable environment, they want to have an integrated community. When we look at medical anchor office facilities, technology anchor office facilities, the employment base that they're going after, they want to be in a place. They want to be in a place where they want to live and work close. They don't want to spend a lot of time commuting. They want to be in an environment where they can do all of those things in one environment. That's the value that we found in creating the place. And so, if you ask us, could we do 500,000 feet of office on this location today? Unequivocally, no. There's no demand to go start building. We would not lead with that office product. But if we create the core, and we'll talk a little bit, we'd like to close by showing you a little bit about what Dave experienced and how it translates into the Riverton model, and why this place has become such a gathering spot for the community. So once again, the summary of this is kind of the big picture concept plan rolls up into these three items.
You touched on scale. Part of our process is we do what we call due diligence and analysis, and we try to get to the bottom of what the real issues are. Then we go into options, and then we go into a kind of final plan. But in the due diligence and discovery phase of work, we do things like North American Properties does, with a serious commitment of looking at other things like things. But then what we do is we take things like Avalon, things like the wharf in Washington D.C., things like Red Bank, New Jersey, and we superimpose them to the same scale on the piece of property you have here. And what was very interesting was the dimensions of things and how they kind of fit. And so you knew you had great capacity to develop this in a really successful way. And it wasn't going to be, it's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It wasn't going to kind of be too small, too big. It was going to be just right. So we've got real confidence in this plan.
And the location regionally, the idea of being right on this commuter path with all of this new roadway infrastructure, accessible to South Jersey, Central Jersey, North Jersey. It's a place where people go by very regularly, particularly seasonally. It pulls from a super region as people are going to and from the shore. So we're fairly confident that the plan will flex over time as people tell us what it wants to be. But if we create this place, there's no doubt that there will be other demand drivers out there that will be extraordinary versus what a market study would say right now should go on this location. John, anything else you want to add on the,
No, thank you. I probably
concept
talked-
plan? Thank you. So drilling down a little bit on this core, the place, creating the place, what is this? And so John talked a little bit about, if you look at maybe the color coding here, the purple building in the middle is a hotel, a 300 rooms, full service hotel with a convention center, and there's a parking deck. We talked about getting people off the street. So there's structured parking here to support parking outside of the core. That's really what we call teaser parking in the middle, so that we can, and it's designed so that we can convert that space very easily for pedestrian events. We'll show you some of that. I want to point out a few things on here. We pointed out the amphitheater looks tiny on the map. We pointed out the Village Green looks tiny on and particularly when we're looking at the scale of this entire project. So even when we blow it up, those spaces look kind of small. But what we're trying to do is create special places throughout the project. Some of those are big gathering spots for large numbers of people. Some of them are just places where you can get a quiet moment. Some of them are places where you can gather with your family. But just to give you an idea of how we use those spaces, it's all in the design principles about this, creating this place. It needs to be a pedestrian-friendly urban scale. We have to integrate those uses. Office, retail, hotel, and residential need to be proximate to each other. We're activating the waterfront here. The waterfront is a very special feature that we don't have at Avalon. And create public gathering places, places where people can come together for special events or ordinary events, just day-to-day activities and day-to-day interaction. You can't get that on the internet. You cannot get social activity on the internet. You can't go eat in a restaurant on the internet. These are the things that we're trying to
Let me just jump in also. The Village Green there in front of the cinema, that's the building with the green shading around the outside. Okay,
That's the-
down in Avalon, they have that open space as a ice rink during the winter time, and during the summertime, it's just an open courtyard area, right?
So yeah, we have a few images that we'd like to share with you. So we'll come back to the Village Green, but just to look at the concept of the integration of the spaces and kind of what that feels like. So this is a photo from Avalon. You see on the right, the hotel was still under construction. We had our grand opening about 10 days ago. We have multifamily residential. You see 5 levels of residential there over the retail. We have these little jewel box retail, as we call them, in the middle. That's in the middle of the street. So this is a boulevard with traffic lanes on both sides, but it's obviously the pedestrian is king in this environment. We want people to be comfortable sitting outside, enjoying the patio dining, walking with their families. It's a very family-friendly environment.
And it was cold when we were there, but there were a lot of people outside. And they have a fireplace next to the ice rink.
And so this is a excuse me.
What do you foresee as phase one? Where does it begin?
Well, as I said, creating the place is really the initiation point. Building other things before you've created the place doesn't really create the value. We've started initially on this retail, the power center quadrant and the mixed use core. That's really our immediate focus. And this type of product takes a little bit longer to put together just because of the complexities of design and the merchandising. It's bringing together multiple tenants to commit to 60, 70 shop tenants plus the anchors that go into this retail environment. But this is our immediate focus. We're out in the marketplace right now marketing this retail core and the power center. So that's where our focus is.
Well,
I think just add to that.
Well, just to elaborate, I think where Pat was coming from is what's the timeline on this? I mean, when do we foresee things happening? We know about the Bass Pro Shop sometimes in 2018, but after that, when do we see the movement, the construction of everything?
Yeah.
Where obviously we're really impressed with all of it, but we've been talking about this, none of your doing, obviously,
Sure,
but
appreciate that.
this is going on for us over 20 years. And we want to tell our residents and the rest of the people that we know about it, but what is the timeline? What are we looking at here?
The Bass Pro will go first. So it's not waiting on the other components, although we do need to have the other components proven to the point that we can finance the Bass Pro.
This year, but for Best Pro?
This year for Bass Pro. The Power Center and the Mixed Use Village, we are planning simultaneous, parallel paths. That we look at that as 2 projects within the project. The Power Center will be a faster schedule just because it's just retail as opposed to the mixed use, which we're dealing with all of these other uses. To do a retail project, we have to have considerable pre-leasing for financing. We're looking at 18 months on the Power Center, and then on the mixed use, we're looking at about 2 years. And keep in mind, the Bass Pro, we inherited that deal. That's why it's able to go quicker. We're starting from scratch on everything else.
Has there been interest in the big box retail?
Yes. That's where the New York ICSC conference that was in December,
Anyone in particular?
we can't name names
Oh, okay.
at this point, but.
So we're looking at from 2018 to 2020.
Correct, yeah.
Probably seeing that dirt move late 19 to start construction in 20. That would be that's a general timeline to start that process. So getting back a little bit more to kind of how these things fit together. Once again, mix of uses here. You see there's an office building on the right. multifamily there in the middle and prominent, and this is where we shut down the central core for an event. I talked about intimate gathering spots. These are just public special places. These don't belong to a retailer. They're just part of the common area of the community, so that people can linger, enjoy the Wi-Fi, enjoy time with the family. Dave mentioned the fireplaces. This is a different fireplace that's down the way a little bit from the ice rink, but this is just, at winter time, different families are gathered around and enjoying time together. They're not necessarily, they don't have shopping bags in their hand right now, but this is bringing, the longer they're there, the more they're going to spend. That's a proven fact. We have community events. This happens to be a charity road race that was held at Avalon, and you can see the retail with the office. This is the single level office product above retail here, so it's a 2-level format with loft office above the retail. John pointed out the amphitheater that we're showing on the water. This is a very simple structure. It's a tiered natural amphitheater here. It happens to be between 2 restaurant buildings looking down the main boulevard. But it just gives you an idea. This was a comedy night, a neighborhood comedy night, and all the residents came out and brought their chairs or they brought their kids. They sat on the lawn and enjoyed this activity. So that's kind of what we call maybe a medium-sized gathering spot. And then we talk about the village green. So once again, this really becomes the heart of the community, and this is where we've designed this so that it can be flexible to have smaller events, but the largest events that we have at Avalon are generally held here on the village green. This is a summertime scene where we have the fountain going, and there's an AstroTurf field in front of the fountain. This is in front of the cinema anchor, and once again you see the 1-level office product over the retail on one side. On the left side closest to us, you have a better shot of it here. The multifamily, 4 levels of multifamily over an ice rink. This is more what you saw last weekend, Dave.
So that's the same space.
Yes, it's just convert. We have convert the condensation lines for the ice rink, or the infrastructure is built in. It's something we put up pretty quickly in the winter, even in the south. The facility that you see in front there is our concierge facility. And so that's just a service that provides services for all of the stakeholders in the community, the office tenants, the residents, the hotel guests, the retailers. They help facilitate business within the community. And yoga, Saturday morning yoga is a pretty popular activity in the summertime on that same village green, so it can be used for various programmed activities. And this is kind of our feature event. This is from last November 17, the tree lighting. It looks like a 4th of July celebration, but you can see the tree there in the middle on top of the concierge building. This was the community turning out, and you notice up in the multifamily, you have people looking out over their balconies. The apartment residents are hosting parties overlooking the. We had several live music acts playing. And it was packed with families. This was a great event for us last November. What we don't have at Avalon is water. So we have a couple of representative renderings of the ideas, but this gives you a good idea of the scale when we describe the plans and the office over retail, the residential over retail. This gives you an idea of the scale of that boulevard. The marina and the waterfront, this is not exactly the plan that we most recently have, but it just represents the interaction, the activation of this waterfront. We think is a very important part of this whole plan. This is another view. This is a little bit more accurate description of the depiction of the marina in its current format. But you see the 3, 4, 5 level buildings there as a matter of scale. So next steps. We're here. We're not asking you to approve this plan tonight. We really just wanted to communicate with you. We met with a subcommittee of the board. Late November, I guess, was the time frame, Mr. Polano. And we showed an earlier version of this plan and just said, hey, this is where we're going. We'd like to come back early next year and give you an update on our progress. And so we've met with Dave to give him a preliminary view of the plan. We're presenting it to you tonight. We want to take the next few weeks to get feedback on that and try to, we're going to continue to iterate it. We're going to continue to incorporate anything we hear from a technical standpoint. We'd like to come back next month to present a final version of this, what I will call this static plan, not the phasing plan that shows how things are going to be built over time, not the transportation, traffic, concurrency, but just a simple two-dimensional concept plan that we know that the borough, that the board has endorsed, so that then we can move forward on more technical analysis, the engineering analysis, and phasing, and kind of grind through the detail to get through a final approved concept plan with phasing plan and traffic.
At what point would you foresee being able to do this in a public meeting, where we can invite the public to see what's going on?
Well, so just a meet and greet, get to know you, exposed to the project. To some extent, I'll defer to you. If there's a positive reaction to this plan, we'll try to get this set up as quickly as possible. We're prepared to do that. We don't want to get too much out there until we know that the board is on board with this, no pun intended.
Let me just jump in. My recommendation to the board is the plan on that, but after your next meeting, because I think there's some other interactions. We know what questions are going to be from the public, and some of those fine things have to be worked out by more than just us. We have to have some communication with the business administrator, the mayor and council, because we have to tweak some of the amenities to see how they best fit in this plan. So my recommendation is to go through and plan on a public presentation, okay, but not until after your February meeting, so maybe sometime in March. But you need to take action to say, okay, this concept plan is fine with SERA, okay, then let's go through and have the public hearing, because they need to do a lot of technical work. Once they get a blessing from you that says the concept appears to be fine, they have to do the computerized model for the traffic, they have to start getting into the real engineering for all of the utilities. They have a load of work to do, but this is the first step. The concept plan is the first step for you to approve.
And where does the residential component come in? Is that towards the back end?
Well, so if I can go back to the plan, just to show kind of the natural progression of this plan.
Bottom line is it's throughout.
Yeah, it will be, so one of the things that we've tried to accomplish with this plan is to provide an opportunity to create the place. And one of the reasons that that the core is where it is that area is developable in the short term, based on site constraints, based on things that are going on. I don't want to get too technical with, I'm not an engineer, but I've learned in the last 3 months more about surcharge and processed dredge material than I've known in 31 years in the business. So the northern components of Parcel C really have more infrastructure work to be done before we can build on them. And the area where we've placed the core, and that was one of the things that we tried to do in this charrette process with the design professionals, was to make sure that we were looking not just at what looks pretty on paper, but what can we build from an engineering standpoint, and what needs to be coordinated with the remediation activities. What are all the things that have to go into when and how we build these things? So we left the Bass Pro. One of the fixed points that we worked around was the Bass Pro location where it sits, because a lot of work has been done to get to where it is today, and we felt it was very important for us as the development team, for you all as the board, and for the borough and the community to get a quick win, to be able to deliver that. And so we kind of worked around that existing pad and that existing parking area. But we moved the retail core to that area because of the availability of bulkhead access for the marina, and the availability to get to that site without a lot more infrastructure having to be put in place from a geotechnical standpoint. The residential is there. We have in that first phase, I believe we said 200 units of residential, kind of tightly associated, single family, tightly associated with that. So that would kind of come out concurrently with that phase. And then there's one multifamily project over retail within the core, and then there's one multifamily project immediately to the north. Together, those are about 600 units. So 800 units of residential kind of in that first wave of development, and then we would roll into the north part as the market dictates and as the land is ready to develop. Also, this plan it's developed it's designed in blocks that are bite-sized development pieces. So if someone comes to us, we get the core built, and someone comes to us and said, okay, we have a 200,000 square foot technology office user that wants to be in a state-of-the-art environment in Central Jersey. We're going to have our RFP response in immediately for that, and we'll have a pad ready to go for that use. So the way that this thing will be phased is we will build into it as the market demands, and it will move generally south to north.
Let me revisit your question on timing. I think it's informative to look at what we did at Avalon, since we keep talking about it so much. We were at this point at the Avalon project at the beginning of 2011, and the hotel that we opened last week was the final component. So 7 years, start to finish, on 86 acres, 2.1 million square feet built, over $1 billion of investment value. This project is probably 2.5 times in value, the size of that. We see this at full build out as 10 years plus. That 7-year schedule at Avalon, anyone in our industry would tell you that is lightning speed to put in place everything we did and to complete that project. So this is, to us, it's not about getting to the finish line of that last piece. It's of course getting to the starting line and getting something out of the ground. That's what we're focused on in the near term, but hopefully that gives you a little perspective that it's not all gonna go at once, but we wanna get that mixed-use core going as soon as we can.
So we do have 2 specific requests of the board tonight. In addition to feedback on the plan, as Dave mentioned, we'll be communicating about the plan with the professionals following this meeting to make sure that we're moving in the right direction with the board's input. But specifically, we'd like to have the board assist us with financial analysis of this. We think the financial advisors for the borough and the financial advisors for the developer should be talking pretty quickly here. I think that will expedite the process as we get into conversations about the pilot, because obviously this is a different program. We have to, we've got to analyze how this project looks financially, what the physical impact is, and the more quickly that process can get started among the professionals that handle that, I think that will expedite the end game of when we can get to the end of the process. The other thing is we've had a little bit of a stiff arm from the Army Corps of Engineers, and I think the borough is probably familiar with that, and from what I hear in some of the roadway improvements that have been studied around here lately, and Dave suggested and we requested that some assistance politically with the Army Corps of Engineers, simply for engagement, simply to have, on behalf of the board and the borough, to encourage the Corps to engage with our consultants to start the diligence on this marina process. There are a lot of procedural steps to get to a marina approval, and there are 5 or 6 different concurrent and then some consecutive things that have to happen. But we can't finish till we start, and it's really important that the Army Corps of Engineers engage with us on that.
I think on this particular project, we probably want to call in our congressman to go
Yeah.
through.
Congressman Pallone,
Yeah.
we've been.
And, it may even be necessary to go through and call in our U.S. Senator, but we'll start with the congressman, okay, see what kind of progress we can make. Because you need somebody on the federal government level to go through and help coordinate it.
So from an action item standpoint, those are the 2 things that we would ask for some.
Are we gonna call Pallone's office, or do
Yeah.
we want them to call?
No.
Okay.
We will call and get it set.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there's no more questions, comments, we appreciate your time tonight. I know you've been anxious to hear from us for an update, and we apologize that there's been a little bit of silence over the last 6 weeks as we've been out grinding the detail from our initial subcommittee meeting, but we hope that you see this positively, and we look forward to working with you to bring this thing to fruition.
What about
And I look forward to being a member of the community.
What about that billboard? Can you do something with that billboard that's out there?
Change the date on the
Oh.
Pro billboard.
Okay, yes. It's Bass Pro's billboard, but yes, sir, we actually will. We've been pushing on Bass Pro, and they've committed to us to get that updated. We
Mr.
are also
Chairman
embarrassed by
and
that.
Commissioners,
Yeah.
I have to tell you, they really have done a tremendous amount of work since our last meeting. So they're to be complimented.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Comment, Kevin has he emailed to me a list of potential meeting dates to really, for the agency and
October 22nd.
North American Properties to start moving this along as quickly as possible. So I'll share that with everyone, and you can decide how to proceed.
So
whether you
you'll
want
be on
this
the
or-
agenda for the next meeting.
We plan to be back on February 22nd if it's on the board's agenda, and we have a couple of potential planning sessions, the work sessions between now and then to try to address any concerns that we need to incorporate into our next presentation.
I thought this was important enough to bring them in under my report phase because we want to keep this moving, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want anything else to add, or?
Nothing else on this. Hercules. Everyone, this is Peter Van de Kooi. He's a planner from my office. He prepared the draft redevelopment plan that we passed out. Anybody that wasn't here at the last meeting, I have more copies, okay? Is there anybody that didn't get this?
No, we got,
Dennis.
Dennis without it.
Dennis wasn't,
And how about you, Pat? Did you get this? Okay. Anybody else need a copy?
I didn't bring it.
I didn't bring them with me.
Well, share it, we'll share.
Good. And Joe, yeah, we have it. Pass this down to Joe because he wasn't here for that meeting, so we have it. Okay?
I'll look in my back, I'll show it.
Let's see, we didn't bring,
I have these actually,
okay.
if that helps.
Yep, good.
Right there.
Why don't you go through and set that up right there? And then plan on giving a quick presentation. I don't know, the reason that I passed it out at the last meeting so that everybody had a chance to go through and look at it. And from the standpoint of it, there's going to be one change. I didn't realize it on our plan. We had used an earlier plan that was in the copy, and I just want to put that on the record right now for, there's going to be one minor change. Let me find it. On page 8. No, page 8 isn't the one. Was 8? Well, interesting thing is my copy is corrected, so. We may not have to correct it. Did you see yours? I just want to show the attorney so that she knows. Okay. I sent her an earlier copy that wasn't corrected, so we don't have to correct it. Good news is the reports that you have in front of you are the latest and greatest. Peter, why don't you just give a very quick overview of each of the conditions that leads up to the actual planning that is recommended?
Sure. Well, essentially, what we've done here, make sure I don't want to walk any of the.
For the minutes, just introduce yourself.
What's that?
For the minutes, introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter Van den Kooi, licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, and
He's the Director of Planning for CME Associates.
Thank you. And yeah, what we've done here essentially is we've prepared a redevelopment plans in draft form right now, based upon the area need of redevelopment study that was adopted by Borough Council September of 2017. Study area, shown on my right here, this is the environmental constraints map that's excerpted from the plan itself. Basically, the site's 590 acres. What we've got here shown are all the different environmental constraints, and you have the typical things you'd expect. There's areas of wetlands, flood zones, which I apologize, it's tough to see. It's probably more visible in the plan itself, but there's flood 100-year floodplains in certain parts of the site, but I mean, of course, there's large swaths of land that's very developable.
I think, Peter, the most important environmental feature that you have to go through and talk about is that the site has to be remediated.
Yes.
And it has to be capped. I think everybody at the table, for the most part, know about the site. We've lived it, so you can just give them a general overview.
Yeah, so with respect to remediation, you have these triangles here, which, again, it's probably easier to see on the exhibits in the plan. These are known contaminated sites as per NJDEP data. There's active remediation going on many of them. We didn't get into tremendous depth of detail in the redevelopment plan, because we're actually past that in terms of the need study would have addressed that.
And I don't think you have to go into the detail because they have it in the plan.
Yeah.
All right, go to the next one.
And, so on this exhibit, we have various sections, of which there's 5 of the plan, and I guess corresponding to this, the best place to reference in the plan is starting on page 7, the land use plan. And that starts out with, we're stating that this plan supersedes the underlying bulk and use standards. It sets forth some definitions that supplement the definitions that are already in the zoning ordinance. Data centers, definition of power plants, warehousing and distribution. Page 8 actually shows the same map that I have here to my right. Starting on page 9, it's got the land uses by section. So starting with section 1, you have permitted principal uses, of course, of warehousing, research laboratories, manufacturing, multiple other commercial industrial uses, as well as some other uses like indoor and outdoor recreational use, wireless telecom, data centers, municipal uses, breweries and distilleries, which can often locate in industrial settings, and power plants is the final use there. And it goes through no conditional uses, but permitted accessory uses, of course, uses customary incidental to the principal uses, parking, solar and renewable energy, and outdoor storage. For the uses subject to certain limitations, as is shown, and that's on page 10, item 4.
And Peter's given you a specific breakdown in my general presentation to you at the last meeting, okay, from the standpoint of the yellow area. The yellow area is the area where distribution warehousing would wind up being. The blue area is the current Hercules plant site that would remain in operation, okay? The green area is an area that would be annexed to Bailey's Park as a open space area or a parkland area. And the purple area is a transitional area that's is intended to go through and have a light manufacturing type use on it unless the road is extended through, because we're trying to encourage that road to be taken through to Hartle Road so that we can complete what is going to be called as the Washington Road bypass. Okay, so that once that's continued, the redevelopment plan says that that purple area can be used for further warehousing. We were concerned about putting too much warehousing and having it released to Cheesequake Road because we wanted to make sure that we can control the traffic. We're modifying the entranceway into the site from Minnesink to go through and try and limit the amount of truck traffic that could go in and out of Minnesink so that we don't have it going through our residential areas like you'll find an occasional truck that comes through now. But the road's going to be designed to encourage them to go down Cheesequake and then eventually to go through the purple zone into Hartle and out onto Journey Mill Road so that they can get to 18 in that fashion. That's the intention of the plan, but we are not going to allow them, or we don't recommend you allow them to go through and have warehousing in the purple zone until that road is complete. So if they come in and they want to put in a rec center, indoor soccer complex, they want to put in a small manufacturing facility that isn't going to generate truck traffic, our plan says that they can do that in the purple area. If they want to put in warehouses, then they have to step up their plan and get that road extended. It's not an easy road to extend because it crosses the railroad, goes through some wetlands. It means Army Corps probably approval and some other things. So we didn't want to go through and have it just zoned as warehousing now because we were afraid of loading too much warehousing onto Cheesequake. If it turns out, however, that traffic, they demonstrate that traffic isn't bad on Cheesequake, that's something the agency can consider later. As you get into the other zone is intended to be more of a power production zone, power plants, power-related uses, solar field on top of the landfill there. And then in the lower portion on the highest ground, because it's actually a beautiful spot, the county school facility that you have on Cheesequake Road has asked us through the county to consider them having a next stage for the children that are growing up from that, to have kind of a work study place, okay, in that location. And they thought that would be a great place, being in an industrial area, because those are the types of jobs they want to try and groom them for. That's the reason that education is provided as a potential use. Not necessarily a rateable, but that's
I was
what,
wondering where that was coming from.
yeah.
Yeah, the county
Yeah.
concept, okay, that's not a rateable.
Right now, I do not believe that the school on Cheesequake Road is a rateable.
No, it's
That-
not, and
it's-
neither would this be.
I don't think it would be. I mean, there may be the potential of negotiating with them. It depends, but you also may want to encourage that use, because we have several people that go to those schools too.
Who's negotiating the pilot?
What's that?
Pilot, who's negotiating a pilot?
It's possible.
Who's the borough?
Oh, who negotiates? The mayor and council.
Because that,
I'm sorry, I have a congested head. I didn't hear what your question was.
it's right next to Bailey Park, which is a mess. I think the borough council should consider councilmen and councilwomen, including Bailey Park.
Doing what with Bailey?
Clean it up, spray park, whatever they planned on doing.
Well, they talked about that, but, you know, we didn't move it ahead. And
I'm talking about getting
Getting them.
part of the pilot.
Yeah.
Now, Peter, is there anything in my general discussion, okay, any highlights that we need to go through and focus on?
I would say two things come to mind. One is, as David mentioned, with regard to section 3 and potential for additional warehousing. What we did in that is we made warehousing a conditional use, and we put appropriate conditions so that the roadway would have to be constructed prior to CO of any warehouse use.
Yep. And that's right, the other thing to point out is the red road that will loop the road that goes to Florida Power and Electric, ultimately to the Washington Road bypass. That's gonna depend upon how this site develops. So I think that the developer is going to come in with various development plans. The specific alignment of that is awkward. We may not actually see that road get totally extended if it turns out that we actually are able to go through and get a power plant at that location, because we may not need the road for circulation as long as it goes out to Harlem. But that is something that is going to evolve as the development develops.
Is anyone here from Hercules or not?
Yes, there are people from Hercules.
And that segues into the one other thought is section 4. We've designed it to permit everything that's currently permitted
Yep.
for Hercules action.
Very good, Peter. Have a seat. Let's let Jen go through. Everybody remembers Jen Smith. She's presented here before.
Nope.
For the record, I'm Jennifer Phillips Smith, and I am an attorney with Gibbons PC. I do represent Hercules in this matter. And Hercules is unlike North American Properties. Hercules is the existing property owner. And you know, they've been on this site for well over 100 years. And for the existing plant in section 4, they plan to be here for a long time to come. There's no plans to close the plant. But over the last several decades, as many of you know, the plant grew smaller. Several areas of the site that used to be used for active production are no longer used. And Hercules found itself with about 400 excess acres. They have been actively marketing and realized that there probably was not one user that was going to come into this site, buy 400 acres, and develop another manufacturing plant. So the goal here was to come in and work with the borough to have the area designated as an area in need of redevelopment, which happened, and then to work with the borough to come up with zoning that would help attract development to town, commercial and industrial development, not residential. And so the point of this plan is not necessarily to say we're gonna put a building here, a building here, a building here. We're not there yet. It's to say these are the uses that the borough would like to see, uses that are gonna drive rateables, and uses that, if you have a good redevelopment plan in place, is going to help Hercules attract the right developers to come into this site and to develop it in sections and phases with good gradable uses. So that's what we've been working with CME on, and we think we've come up with a plan that works for Hercules, that will help them maintain the existing plant and help them attract that type of investment.
And let the record reflect that from the standpoint of this project, this has been a project that we worked with Hercules on. We presented them some of our draft plans, I think, as early as September sometime, for their input. They provided input. We went back and forth on a few things to see how we can go through and make this project work for SERA as well as work for them. So this was not something that we just prepared without any input from them. Hercules had a lot of input from, with us in order to make this something that is truly developable.
Or the other way is it's something, if Hercules were to put together a plan, I mean, we obviously would want all uses on all parts of the site, but in
Yeah.
working with the borough, have been able to tailor it down so that the infrastructure and the phasing will work together.
Hey, we're trying to encourage another power plant on this site if we can get it, because of the high amount of ratables that we get from it. If it can't happen, then we're gonna have to revisit this sometime in the future, okay? But from the standpoint, that's what the boroughs had said to this.
Dave, the reason I'm smiling a little bit is a little unusual. First of all, it's a little unusual to have an attorney give this type of dissertation, but it's also a little unusual that my engineer prepared this plan for you. Do you have your own planner, your own engineers, your own architects, or, I'm sure, I mean, you're gonna need all of these things.
To be clear, we are not the
Oh, yeah.
developer, we're the property owner.
Right.
So, yes, this is the zoning document, this is not the.
They wanted all the
site plan.
warehouses.
This is not, to be
Dave's got a
clear.
plan right now.
I mean, we've had applicants come in saying what they want, they'll talk to our engineer, and our
Right.
engineer pretty much knows what we want,
Right,
right, but
This
you're-
was a combination.
Okay.
and we,
I mean,
we
you
do
guys are
have-
neighbors, I'm letting a lot of things slide here, believe me, because an attorney shouldn't be giving this presentation, period. You're
we
the
have-
property owner, you're talking about your property, that's fine, you shouldn't be talking about plans, you shouldn't be talking about what's good for the borough, you're not an expert in that field,
Right.
okay? You're a neighbor, we're listening to you, trust me, if this was North American Properties, this wouldn't be going on, all right?
We do have our engineer from Mazer Consulting
Okay,
here.
let's
We
hear
do
from him.
have our redevelopment consultant here as well, so we do
That's
have a
who-
team
That's
here,
who should be
but.
speaking about this, not the attorney, thank you.
Mr. Bush, if you'd like to also talk about the plan.
Sure.
You should bring up Glenn also,
Yeah.
because he's their development consultant.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Good evening, Glenn Stock.
And Dan Bush from Mazer, also planner and engineer.
And Glenn, where are you from?
Stock Development Group,
Okay, thank you.
And what's your title?
president.
Okay.
So I've been in northern New Jersey redeveloping brownfield sites for almost a decade. I recently acquired the Exxon Mobil property in Edison. I acquired the Gerdau steel plant in Perth Amboy, taking that through redevelopment. I did 3 million square feet with Prologis in Port Reading, Elizabeth, Morris Township, a lot of redevelopment experience. In this case, I'm an advisor to the property owner, as Jennifer said. So in terms of our plan, and you can help me out, I mean, it all started with what are their needs, right? Which is the current operation, which you can see, I'm sorry, in the blue area, as stated. And so throughout that, you got a bunch of surplus property. I think Peter mentioned that there's wetlands out there, some environmental issues. We basically looked at the plan with an eye towards the site cleanup and the different parcels. So the site cleanup, remedial investigation was done for the site in 2016. Going through remedial measures, the site will be cleaned up over the next 3 years. So that's how we came up with the phases.
Yeah, originally, we've been working on this site for about 4 or 5 years. The original goal was to basically get a single tenant that would take over and basically acquire the balance of the property outside of the existing plant that was to remain.
And it became abundantly obvious that that wasn't gonna work, that you needed to have specific developers come in and build different pieces of it. And that's at the point in time where basically the owner made a determination that the best route was to be able to go through redevelopment and be able to basically phase the project in. So that's kind of how this has evolved over the course of time.
And again, with an eye towards the environmental cleanup as well. I mean, some of these, obviously, no residential, right, that's sort of a starter. And then just looking at what kind of uses, commercial uses could be credible caps. And in this area in here, the yellow, as I said, is strategic because that area has the least amount of cleanup remaining, a few source areas that need to be remediated. Down in here, we've got some wetlands and you've got some impacts with PCBs and what have you, just a more complicated cleanup. So put that further down the road. Infrastructure improvements, I think Dave and Peter mentioned, starting where you've got existing infrastructure and kind of limiting that into bite-sized elements. I think this is about 60 acres or so for section 1. So, you know, kind of creating a discipline to kind of take down the property, build the infrastructure as you go along the way, leverage pilots to the extent that you can for public infrastructure improvements. And at the end of the day, as Dave explained, this potentially becomes I think it's the Washington Road bypass, which is contemplated in the regional circulation plan. So this is kind of all the master planning, I think, that's gone on for the past, I guess I've been involved for over 2 years.
Okay, just keep in mind, this is economic redevelopment, like, we need, the warehouses are the worst, I mean, they're the worst ratables. So we're gonna need something, like a credible pilot program to present to the council.
Well, understood, yeah. And again, I think what we're trying to do is try to match as many what the zoning's trying to do is try to match as many market opportunities. The power plants are great, the infrastructure's here. You've got one sort of potentially coming online in MEC.
Incidentally, they have been working with us to make sure that MEC can get their power lines across the site, get the transmission lines that they have to, because it has to go across their site to connect to it. And that is all listed as permitted uses in this plan, so that we don't have we have to make sure that MEC can happen, and we've made sure of that in this redevelopment plan.
And being involved with MEC, I can tell you that we've cited a substation that's adequately sized for the MEC project on this particular site.
I mean, this is a redevelopment zone, I mean, if something else comes up that is a great rateable, we make it permitted, I mean, we go to the council, and we ask to amend the redevelopment plan. So
Absolutely.
whether it's permitted or,
There's no
like,
prohibition
who
on
cares
that.
if it's permitted or not?
Absolutely.
If they come up with something better economically presented, and the commissioners will discuss it, and we'll present it to the council.
And that's exactly.
We appreciate that.
This is the first redevelopment plan to be adopted for this property. There currently isn't one in effect. So part of going out to the market and attracting people is being able to say, look, here's the redevelopment plan, here's the permitted uses. Now let's talk about the investment on the site.
And if you take a look at the actual uses, we've included just about anything that we could have imagined, okay, that would be a good rateable, okay, for the borough. And they're listed in the various sites. So there's a lot of flexibility in order to be able to find the right users that are gonna give us high ratables. But if as the chairman said, if something else comes up, then we would have to consider an amendment. Because the focus is getting ratables.
I mean, nothing outrageous, I don't want a nuclear power plant.
I'm not sure we can get one permitted there, but the brewery, right?
Just talked about that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that is permitted use that's listed here. So, I mean, we've gotten a little bit creative in order to try and encourage some higher end uses on the site. What's the other term for the, not power center, but the electrical, oh, come on.
Substation?
No, not, substations are permitted.
Cogen?
Data centers?
Cogens are definitely
Oh,
submitted.
data center.
Data
Data
centers,
centers,
yes.
okay, data centers are a permitted use, whether we get them, okay, at least if we have a development plan, I just couldn't think of the term off the top of my head. But data centers are encouraged on the site, because we know that those are nice ratables, and they create a lot of jobs in the construction of these data centers.
So what do we need to do tonight?
Our recommendation tonight is that you go through and pass a resolution authorizing approving the redevelopment plan from SERA's perspective and requesting the mayor and council to forward it to the planning board for consideration.
You have a resolution? Okay. Do we have a resolution? No.
No, we do not.
We don't have a resolution, but it can be created while we go to our next items.
Okay. Anything else?
No, no, thank you.
Thank you. We do look forward to working with you as this goes through. Obviously, this is step 2 of many. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is development of Morgan Section 35. I'm gonna take this, if you don't mind, Dave, to begin with. I was at that meeting, Vicki was at it.
I was
Pat, were
there.
you there too? Yeah. You guys were there. Just my personal view on this, it was a nice college project. A couple of college people put something together with Susan Green, who's now our borough planner. The gist of it is build a bunch of houses, build some shopping centers, and the shopping centers will succeed. The traffic plan was awful, closing the circle around the Club and A and making left turns on Route 35. And a lot of residents also had a problem with that. I mean, we all agree that Morgan needs to be redeveloped. But the plan that was presented that night, I think was, and given the amount of time that they had to do it was only a few months, so I give them a lot of credit. You know, it was like a B+ college project, but in the real world, it just wasn't feasible. They were actually using some properties that are part of the COA plan also, and it just wasn't feasible. But to present to a college professor, it was okay. So, I don't know if Pat, if you want to add anything to that, or
No, that's pretty much, I
Sums
mean,
it up.
at this point, I think we kick it up to the, you know, to the planning board, you know, we've passed resolutions for the planning board to act on it.
oh, you did that already?
No.
As council?
How could that?
No, that's right, no, the
No,
the
we did
planning
not.
board.
No, and that plan was not what we had asked for here. We asked for consideration to move sections of 35 into a redevelopment zone. That was something that I had requested of this agency to look into. Mr. Gorillo and the college students that came in with Susan Gruhl, that was not what we had asked for.
No.
No,
That was-
this is.
Is this just your comment?
Right.
Yeah, that was just something that the Alliance Group had put together. I think the residents, they looked, we all watched, we saw, and they raised a lot of very valid points. I think that there was some things lacking and to be desired, and quite frankly, dangerous about that plan. But, you know, I concur with what you said, and, you know, agreeing with some of your comments. I'm more interested in what we can do here at this agency as far as looking at a redevelopment, possibilities. Did we ever officially do that? I think we've been asking a couple of months now.
I think we asked Joe to talk to the business owners, because I service my car at Weber's Garage, and I know the Lockwoods, and when they heard
weren't
I
happy about that
need
plan.
neither Weber's nor Lockwood were happy about,
When business owners hear redevelopment, they think condemnation and.
Right.
Right, so.
Well, I think in the plan that was presented at the, at Gorillo and so forth, they actually had some of those businesses that were just wiped out. They were just
Yeah.
eliminated. I mean, that's a heck of a way for a business owner to see their, business and their livelihoods just kind of go down the tubes. I hope that they realized what that was at the end of the day. From our perspective here, yeah, I think we asked you, Joe, to, talk to the business owners before we did anything and see where they were.
That land was just sold, West Marine and next door.
Yes.
So all those three places, that was, there's new owners there. They're opening up West Marine now. I think it's gonna be an automobile,
Depot, car depot.
no, they're gonna fix high-end cars.
I heard that too. I heard that a
Well, they're-
while back.
They're already operating down where, by the first aid squad in that building there, until they can get the lifts and reinforce the floor and everything else they're doing there now.
Well, that's also across the street, was supposed to be another,
The
the gray
Stewart's lot.
building.
I know,
and
that's
they-
going nowhere.
That's not going, yes, and I see a lot, because down where one of the clubs were, has a high end, where.
Well, that's gone.
That one is gone?
Yeah, he's gone.
He's gone too?
That's where they're operating out of now, until,
But they built a nice building there too. It was where one of the clubs were, another
Yeah.
club down the block. It was, oh geez,
South Amboy you're talking about.
no.
Where they have all the Ford trucks
No, not the
out
South Amboy one, no, it was Sayville on Route 35. There's all cars that, well, whatever, I mean, that's.
The people who own Pure and the place across the street, they own that building as well, I think the one you're talking about, by the First Aid Squad. And they, that's where they were doing the cars before. But he's gone.
Yeah.
And now the people who are going into West Marine are now working there until they can get everything finished at,
So what is it, we have to get back to?
No, we don't. We're just gonna move on. We talked about it.
So is anybody gonna get back to Steve or Stu, or just we're saying, because,
It really wasn't his project, it was the students, so I don't know what he wants to do. I mean, he could bring up something at the council.
Chairman, in my email that I shared with I indicated to Steve that the council members would get back and brief him.
All right, you guys.
Tom,
Yeah,
didn't
so
you
it's
pass
outside of this
an
agency.
ordinance,
That's
Oh,
why.
a resolution, when you were on the council for Route 35?
They dropped it in our lap pack.
I don't remember. I think we did try to do it, it could very well be, I mean.
I think we already have, that was adopted in ordinance adopting the Route 35 Phase 1 redevelopment.
Yeah. I know what's for me, I know we brought it up.
I have this at home.
Yeah. Well, if you got it running, then it was done.
Yes, Tom,
There was a phase one and a phase two, there was a phase one
Suggestion.
redevelopment plan, which was the which was the
Yeah,
Club
it was a
and A.
while ago.
Then there was a phase two, which was Robert E. Lee. Hasn't necessarily been, that was never adopted, but that was in circulation, okay? And it had to be dropped because of the fact that we couldn't come to terms with the property owner, okay?
Contamination too, right?
Well, the contamination, that complicated, but they could never agree on how they would go through and transfer the property or what they would sell it for. But that project may be coming back to life, and at a future meeting, I think we need to talk about the Robert E. Lee site, because there's action going on the cleanup, but we may be able to tie the cleanup in that National Lead's gonna have to go through and do with a redevelopment plan that may see Robert E. Lee be able to go through and move forward. It's all gonna be a function of how that works with the property owner. And
Chairman, can I bring up one of the things, since we're talking about redevelopment of Route 35? We talked about Melrose a while back. Well, it has become a real junkyard now. They moved all the stuff from over on the southbound side, where the Garden State Parkway is working, and they moved it all over by the Gentlemen's Club. And it's getting worse. You ride down that road, and it looks terrible. They have probably 200 trucks in there now with, it looks like debris all over it. I don't know, maybe something worthwhile.
You know, following up on my visit in Avalon, it was interesting because the Avalon project spurred economic development surrounding it on other people's properties, okay? If we go through and do a redevelopment plan for Route 35 in Melrose right now, we're gonna have to do it based upon just the lots and properties and the types of typical businesses that we would go through and see. If we wait till this gets started, we're liable to find that there's a whole new market on the growth that could be generated, and we would have a higher end redevelopment project. So that's something to think about, but it's up to the commission to decide how you want to proceed.
But didn't you look into that as well, or attempt to have somebody look at it? why all those trucks are there now?
It's not zoned for it, I'm told.
They're not zoned for it.
And
And
nobody
they have no
seems to have
approval.
any appetite for wanting to do anything about it.
Who-
Why, I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
I was
Adoption
told
of
they
the,
were supposed to come before the zoning board a few years ago, never did.
I know there was no approvals there.
And they're just
All
doing
right,
what they
well,
want
this-
anyway.
This isn't a function of SERA.
No,
You guys can take care of that. So
redevelopment it is.
It's not in a redevelopment zone, it's not being, we're not gonna discuss that. Adoption of the 2018 budget.
The budget, I submitted the budget to the agency back in, I'm not sure if it's September or October, I think October. Could have been November, but anyway, we submitted the budget. We had to wait a period of time and submit it in turn to the state, but now we have to finalize the budget. There've been no changes in the budget document that was submitted previously. So I'm asking for the agency to approve the budget that was submitted a couple of months ago without any changes to it.
Do we need to make a motion to approve that now, or?
Well, I think we should make a, well, you could do that now, or we could just do it in the resolution section, when we get to that.
Yeah, under the new business.
Okay, all right. All right, resolution for providing for holding a private executive meeting pertaining to litigation, personnel, contract negotiation, and property acquisition and sale. Can I have a motion to go into closed?
Make a motion, we're going closed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And sometimes I like, see, when you see me quiet, I mean, that's
It's Jimmy Phillips. And he's an old friend.
Yes, he is.
God.
Is the camera back on? We'll talk later. Okay. Resolution to adopt the 2018 budget.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, now be it resolved that the governing body of the Cerebral Economic Redevelopment Agency hereby adopts and approves a budget that was submitted for SERA's evaluation at an open public meeting occurring on December 14th, 2017, and therefore the agency approves the budget that will run from January 1st, 2018, ending on December 31st, 2018.
Have a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we approve on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Yes.
Mr. Travisano?
Yes.
Mr. Polenta?
Yes.
Mr. Gabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Delina?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Lembo?
He stepped out.
A long one for you today.
It's all right, you gotta get used to this.
I have to note the individual votes, so when he comes in, we'll just ask him. Something I have to
We're not
submit to
gonna
the
wait
state.
for him. B, resolution approving modification of Leaf Industries approval for development.
Yeah, Chairman, given the nature of the history of this project, I'd rather than having a resolution at this meeting, I'd like one at next meeting, but I would want to get the sense of the commissioners. The developer has indicated that they did not have any problem with the resolution that the agency approved in November, but they would like a relief or a clarification in the resolution that would allow them to proceed with the construction of the 13,125,000 square feet building while they're diligently applying for the DEP permits for the larger building, and that if they got those permits, they would add on to the building, or if they're still in construction, continue with a larger building, and in exchange for that, we would be settling any outstanding issues, and there wouldn't be a challenge to the resolution we adopted. If that conceptually is okay, I will work out the details of the language with Mr. Vignolo. It will be in writing, Mr. Trevisano, and it will be carefully worded, and I'll bring it back to the commissioners for the February meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone in agreement?
We need to make a motion?
No.
No, just
this is-
consent.
Yeah, I agree, but the problem I have is, what can we do if he doesn't apply for the,
You can't make him apply. He has to enter into a redevelopment agreement with us. In the agreement, there'll be time limits. If he doesn't act within the time limits, the designation expires and he has to come back and start over again.
because past experience with this guy hasn't been the greatest.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to not put it on the record now.
Gotta
and
be
have
in
it
writing,
provided.
definitely.
Anything else?
Yes, Chairman, there was a request by Hercules today and by our agency engineer to approve of the draft redevelopment plan and send it on to the mayor, council, and planning board. And I, along with my colleagues, have cobbled together a resolution I'd like to put on the record. Whereas Hercules has been a corporate member of the Borough of Sayreville for over 100 years, and whereas over time the size of the Hercules facility footprint has shrunken, making excess land available for redevelopment, and whereas Hercules wishes to redevelop their site, and whereas the Borough Council adopted an ordinance in 2017 designating the Hercules property as an area in need of redevelopment, and whereas the agency engineer and Hercules have worked together over the last 12 months to develop a draft redevelopment plan for the property, and whereas the agency engineer and Hercules presented said draft redevelopment plan to the agency at their 1/25/18 regular agency meeting, now therefore be it resolved that the redevelopment plan entitled Hercules Redevelopment Plan Draft dated December 13th, 2017, be forwarded to the mayor and council and planning board with a recommendation for review and approval.
One key question, wherever you mention agency engineer, put agency engineer and planner, because it's a planning document.
You got it, agency engineer and planner.
So that's a resolution.
That's
So
a
we-
resolution.
Okay, have a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we approve the resolution on roll call vote.
Second motion.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Diadio?
Yes.
Mr. Travisano?
Yes.
Mr. Palando?
Yes.
Mr. Gabelli?
Yes.
Mr. Delina?
Yes.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Comment, that's all the resolutions. right?
What was it? Say.
Yeah, for Councilman Lembo, on the budget, we kept the vote open since you took a 5-minute break. Just wanted, Joe needed to record your vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pardon me? On the budget, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, can I have a motion open to the public?
I make a motion, we open to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Do you wish to say anything else, Counselor?
I wouldn't say anything else.
Motion to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. The motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you all.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.